Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Well, I thought I'd talk about getting ripped off, or really how to avoid getting ripped off by a motorcycle service department, or really anybody that's being paid to service your motorcycle. I recently had two bad experiences back to back getting a couple different motorcycles serviced. I'll start with my 2019 Street Glide Special. I needed a new rear tire, and I figured while I was in the shop I'd go ahead and get the flush done on the clutch and the brakes, because that bike's about 2 years old since it was manufactured. You know, that fluid is prone to attracting water, which can cause corrosion of your brake and clutch components, so not a good thing. Harley actually had a recall on those bikes shortly after they were sold for that very reason. So I took it into a dealership that used to be a Harley Davidson dealer, and they, along with about 100 other dealers, lost their franchise last year as part of the Harley Davidson Motor Company consolidation of dealerships, where Harley dealerships went from 700 to about 600 in the US last year. What was funny is I had got my bike serviced there in September, and that was right before they lost their franchise. And of course, they weren't talking about it at the time. But I had a great service experience. This is a dealership in the Kansas City area. I'm not going to mention their name. You can probably figure it out if you really lived in the area. It was important to you, but I'm trying to make this more generic. So anyway, I go back to this dealership after they had lost their Harley franchise, and I called the service manager, told him what I needed to do, told him I was kind of jammed up that day, but if they could turn it around relatively quickly, I'd wait on it. They said no problem, and over the phone they quoted me about $500 total charge. They said they had a sale going on the rear tire and the flush and everything else would come out to about $500. So I get there, and I was in a hurry to get back to work, and they turned the bike around in 40 minutes, which was really quick. And I was quite pleased with it. But then I got the bill, and it was over $700. And I thought, man, what happened? They said, oh, it was this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, oh, fine. I paid for it and hit the road. And the whole time I'm riding my bike back, that just can't be right. So I get home, I start paying closer attention to the service bill, which I should have done before I left the dealership. And I see all these strange charges. In fact, the wording on the receipt was really weird. I mean, I called them and tried to figure out what was going on. I told them my CPA couldn't have figured out this receipt. There was like a $50 charge for valve stems. It needed one valve stem, so why am I being charged $50? And just everything was inflated. So it turned out the service manager didn't know what to do, wasn't quite sure what was going on, said I had to call the general manager. So I'm playing phone tag with these people all the rest of the afternoon. Anyway, it turned out they had charged me for an entire box of valve stems. So instead of $4, they charged me $48 plus tax for an entire box. And then everything else was inflated as well. So as it was, what should have been $500 turned out to be $650. So I realized I had made a couple mistakes. I knew better, but I had trusted them because I had a good experience with them before, but they were a wholly different type of dealership at this point. And just didn't get a good vibe from that place. I don't know if you've ever been to a business that didn't seem that was going to last very long. That was kind of the vibe of the place. They had about half their service base closed compared to what they used to have when they were a full-fledged Harley dealership. The bay that they were doing the work in was out of view from the observation window. Obviously it had a new rear tire on it. I was hoping they flushed the fluids like they said they did. But aside from that, I just couldn't understand why the charges were so high. So I realized what I should have done was gotten a detailed estimate before it went into service, written estimate. I should have clarified whether the estimated shop time for the work was going to be actually charged, or that was an estimate. Just charge you an hourly rate times how much time it actually took. In their case, on the estimate, it was about 3.5 hours of time, and they spent 40 minutes with the bike, but they still billed their estimated time. I've been to other dealerships where they would estimate time, but only charge the actual time spent times their shop rate. So that's my first tip, actually second tip. First tip, get a written estimate. Second tip, clarify whether the estimated time is going to be charged regardless of how long it takes, or if they're going to basically charge actual time. And then make sure you're clear with them that if there's any extra work to be done, that they have to get approval before doing it. So that was a pretty bad experience. I had gotten complacent because, again, I had previously good experiences with that dealership service department, and wasn't expecting to get whammied like that. And it took me about 3 days of haggling back and forth to get the refund on the extra valve stems I was charged. So it just seems like the place might not be operating on the up and up. I'll let you be the judge of that. But if you had that experience, what would you think? I mean, basically a receipt that you couldn't decipher, taking forever to get a refund on something that should have been obvious right out of the gate, just on and on. My second recent experience was on my 82 Virago. It needed carb work done. I don't have the vacuum gauges and the other things needed to do it properly, so called my local metric dealer that I buy a lot of bikes from, and they didn't want to touch it. Busy summer season, everybody's busier than normal. Only time they'll ever mess with that bike, if at all, is in the dead of winter. So I called them up and they're like, nah, we're not going to take it. So I got referred to an independent guy who was working out of a rented garage behind somebody's house in a rural area outside the metro. And I took it to him. We agreed what was going to be done, ballpark price, shook hands on it, and I left the bike with him for a week. Got the bike back. The tank had a bunch of fibers, cloth fibers embedded in it. He had to take the tank off to work on the carb, so it's obvious that he spilled gasoline all over the tank and then left a cotton towel around it, which softened up the paint and then embedded fibers into it. He tried to tell me that the paint was wet when I dropped it off, which is interesting because that bike, we painted the tank on that a year and a half ago, so obviously that wasn't the issue. It turned out the guy didn't do half the work that he agreed that he would do, and I didn't find out that after the fact. I mean, the guy was about 80 years old. I trusted him. He seemed to know what he was doing, but the warning sign for me was right out of the gate. He said that he should have retired long ago. He was sick of doing this work. So I was like, wow, do I really want to leave the bike with him? And I took a chance, and didn't work out too well. He supposedly did the carb work, and on the first ride, the bike wouldn't run after about 40 miles. So back-to-back bad experiences. Again, I'd say to the extent possible, try and do the work yourself, although putting a rear tire on a Harley, if you don't have the proper lift, is pretty much outside the scope of most do-it-yourselfers. But again, I think if you can get a firm agreement on the work to be done, how much it's going to cost, what the basis of the charges is in terms of time and materials and time frame for getting the work done, I think you'll be ahead of the game. So please let me know your thoughts. Have you had similar experiences to this? What suggestions do you have in addition to what I've offered here to have a better experience with the service department? Please let me know, and thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.